friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Ooh, you sound very deep in baritone.
I'm trying.
Yeah, it's nice.
Thank you.
Smokestack was chastising me before the show because he said my audio quality wasn't as good as normal. And I said I didn't know why, except maybe I left my microphone on the floor of a car all week to be kicked around by feet.
Yeah.
So maybe, but I think it's a pretty durable microphone. It's this blue Snowball that they used to sell like 13 years ago.
It's just probably got some like Chick-fil-A, batter crumbs in it or something.
No, I don't go to Chick-fil-A as a rule because, and this isn't helping, what I'm doing now is I'm rotating the microphone away from my own mouth and looking it over for sauce.
Oh, okay.
So that's why but no, there's nothing, I don't go to Chick-fil-A as a rule because I don't like them.
Fair enough.
I only really stand Taco Bell.
That's where you okay.
That's the Taco Bell, but I'll eat a burger from a Jack's maybe.
Okay.
A Jack in the Box or a Whataburger.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly just the Taco Bell.
Whataburger is sort of a Western thing, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it used to be. It was all on the. There was this long, as was foretold in the prophecy, on the West Coast. When you cross the Mississippi River, all the radio stations change from the call sign being W to K.
Oh yeah. And
then they're on the K side, and they also have the Whataburger. Mm-hmm. And when you're on the W side, on the east side, you have the W and Publix.
Publix. Okay.
The grocery store.
Yeah.
And that's the two big differences between the East and the West. If we had to break it down, that's the two main differences.
Cool. Well, I'm going to be listening to some K radio stations and eating some Whataburgers next week as I
you're going on a
hit
trip.
the road, yeah.
You're going to go on a road trip. Are you going to go out to the desert, right?
Yeah, I'm going to the desert with my boy. We're going to have a week-long trip, Vision Quest.
That's great.
We're going to, go to a sweat lodge, take some peyote.
That's something everyone should do.
Just kidding.
I haven't been out to the desert in a while. I went there with a friend of mine in college. Mm-hmm. Because I was doing an internship in California, and I just drove to California. I needed the car. So I drove there, and he rode with me because it was a long drive, and then he flew back.
Right.
And we made a trip of it, and we left like a week early just to go see some stuff. And my most memorable was going out to the Petrified Forest. Mm-hmm. We went hiking and camping in the backcountry.
Ooh, nice.
Which, if you want to feel like you're remote, go in the backcountry of the Petrified Forest.
Right on.
Because there's no one there for miles.
Cool.
And it has this curious quality, which I may have mentioned before, which is that it's so flat and there's no objects to reflect the sound of your voice. Mm-hmm. So when you speak, your voice just goes away. And so me and him, I will call him for the purposes of this story, Telemachus.
It's a good name, yeah.
That's not his real name, obviously. But me and Telemachus were out there, and I would say, "Hey, Telemachus," and if I wasn't pointing my mouth right at him, he could not hear me.
That's weird.
It's very strange because you speak, like you're used to speaking and you sort of hear your own voice a little bit. But imagine you speak and you only sort of really hear it like just slightly in your own, like echoing off your own bones.
Sure.
And it's like your voice almost doesn't exist. It's very strange.
Weird. All right, I'm gonna take the boy out in the backcountry and have him experience this.
Watch for scorpions and snakes.
Okay.
But if you bring the radio,
Yep.
to make it go around at night, and you can sometimes pick up Jupiter.
Okay.
Which is not Jupiter during a big solar storm. Jupiter's magnetic interactions with the magnetosphere of Jupiter produces radio waves big enough to be heard in the on Earth when you're in a spot far enough away from terrestrial radio.
That's weird.
It sounds sort of like this. Like that.
It's like the mating call of a whale. Space
Well,
whale.
yeah, but make it a little more spacey.
Yeah, sure.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah, that's in a song I wrote. People always ask me, the lyric of the song is, I have heard Jupiter playing on the radio. He's in this, and they're like, what are you talking about? And then I have to explain it.
It's like literally.
Which means it's not a good lyric because lyrics should be understood by people.
Mm-hmm.
But, what are you going to do? Today on show, we're going to talk a little bit about something that people think exists, which doesn't.
Sweet.
And something people think doesn't exist, but which does.
Oh.
And also, you're going to give some more relationship advice.
I'm going to try my best. Yeah.
We had a lot of people interested in that and asking you questions. You've become like a dear Annie.
We've got a deer smokestack tonight.
Yeah.
This is a nighttime show, BT Dubs.
Yeah, it is. It is a nighttime show because of the schedule.
Yeah.
The schedule.
Expect some mellow vibes.
Before we talk about what doesn't exist that you think does.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have gasoline?
I personally have plenty.
Me too. I always feel like I am like a prepper that just always gets missed. Every single catastrophe that happens is just like sails over me.
Yep.
And I happen to be in an isolated pocket of somewhere where it didn't matter at all. And if I didn't have the twatter, I'd never even know it existed.
Well, friend of show Albert Einstein saw you remarking about something like that on the twatter, and I told him that you tend to dance between the raindrops.
It's true.
Yeah.
I do dance between, and I appreciate that. Thank you God for sparing me tremendous troubles.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I feel like I'm always setting the table for the disaster that never comes. Like I prepare.
Yeah.
I'm ready. And it's like I've set and the guest just doesn't show up for like year after year, and I'm getting a little annoyed. I'm like, when is the collapse going to happen? I'm ready. Just hurry up, and it's just always at this point. I feel like there'd be nuclear bombs going off, and I would just be sitting in some pocket where everything was just normal.
Yeah,
which maybe colors my the advice I give to people, because people are always like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, it's fine. And that maybe just because
but it always is fine.
It always is fine. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's all just in your mind. The people in Gaza right now, most of them are just upset about nothing.
Right.
I mean, there's a few rockets, but mostly that's just TV too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of those rockets are just going up and doing nothing.
Yep.
It's a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have that iron shield thing, but I think a lot of that is just fireworks. I think they're just shit. Like I more and more, I just am like, no.
So the whole dust up in Gaza mostly fake?
No, I think it's real, but there's fake elements to it. I mean,
sure.
Because it's just, whatever comes to the TV is fake. Here, which is a good lead into something from history that almost everyone knows about, has heard about, has seen.
Mm-hmm.
That you think is real. You've seen them in movies about historical events. You've seen them in like sword and sandal movies and medieval movies. Yeah, you've seen them in video games. You've probably held a replica in your hand, maybe at one time, and you've seen them displayed in museums. Okay. No less the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Central Park, New York City. But they never were real. They were just a thing that was made up in our heads. And they came to be so powerful a meme that we just assumed they were real. People made them and then put them in museums thinking they were real things from the past.
What?
I know. Okay. Here's the thing. we're going to discuss it. We're going to discuss two versions of the same thing.
Okay.
Today we're going to discuss the curious case of the weapon that doesn't exist.
Oh man, that's going to be cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to take a guess, listener and smokestack, what weapon from history before guns, right? Let's say medieval era, classical era, biblical times that you've seen countless times. What weapon do you think shows up all over the place, never actually existed in any meaningful way?
Ninja throwing star.
No, that's a good guess, but I think that is somewhat real.
Oh, okay.
Mostly people threw knives because they had knives.
Mm-hmm.
But then someone was like, have you ever tried throwing knives?
Yes, it's very difficult.
It's very difficult. You often hit the handle.
Yeah. It's like you have to be accurate and you have to time the rotation of the blade.
Correct.
It's quite a thing.
It's quite a thing. I got to where I had my set distance. I could always do it if I just threw it as hard as I could. It's like if I do maximum force from this exact distance, it will hit, right? But if you vary that distance like a half foot or whatever, it's like, nah, all bets are off. It's very hard to do. And so some smart guy was like, well, what if I just made the handle a knife too? And then the sides. What if they was just all knives? Mm-hmm. And then he had a ninja throwing star.
Okay.
But that loses some weight and heft to it. Like the knife has some nice heft, so it doesn't go in as far. It's a problem. Mm-hmm. Mostly people just, if you're going to throw weapons, that they're not. Although actually, the Romans would throw darts.
I feel like if I was hit with a ninja throwing star, I would just be mad.
Yeah, you'd be like, ow!
Yeah. It would just enrage me.
The Romans, the game of darts, like the dart board, they used to throw like lawn darts, but it's big, heavy, and they'd just throw those.
Yeah. And
that would be upsetting for people. But no, not the ninja star. Take another guess. I'll give you three.
The two-handed broadsword.
No, that's real.
Okay.
They called them great swords.
All right.
That's real. It had its uses. Give
me a hint. Give me is it a medieval? Is it European? Is it Asian?
It's the version. It exists in pretend all over the world.
Okay.
Everyone has fooled themselves into thinking they had a version of this thing, and none of them did. But the common version you'd most likely see is a medieval weapon of some kind.
Ball and chain.
Correct!
Flail. Yeah.
The flail.
Yeah.
The flail never is fake.
Can't believe I got that.
The flail is fake.
The flail is fake. Okay.
The flail is fake. All right. And we know this because there's almost no historical record of it at all, ever.
Well, it seems very an unwieldy sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's hard to think of all the problems with this imaginary.
I would just hit myself over and over again with this stupid spiked ball.
Right.
Yeah.
So, exactly. It's hard to aim. Right. So you got this. It's like that game where you're trying to bounce the ping pong off the paddle with the string, but you have a spike chain.
Okay.
And it doesn't bounce.
It's just awful.
And you only it's terrible. Second, you're very likely to hit yourself spinning it around. Or if it glances off someone's armor or shield and just comes back and whacks you in the hand.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, it's not.
And third, and most importantly, what advantage have you with a flail over just a mace? What is the chain bringing to the table here?
Maybe some head speed?
Maybe, but you lose what you gain in head speed. Maybe you lose in the amount of weight you can put on there.
Yeah, just put it on a longer shaft if you want better head
speed.
Right.
You reduces the mass you can put on the end of the ball, the force you can strike with. It reduces your follow through completely with the strike. Reduces your accuracy. The chain can break is a major fail point that can break. It gets wrapped around other people's things, and people are like, well, you wrap it around, and you pull their sword out of their hand. It's like if you have a hand on the flail, and they've got two hands on a sword, their two hands versus your one, who's going to win this pull fight?
Yeah, man.
They're just going to pull it out. And another one is if you're in formation, and you're like, you know,
oh, you're gonna be whacking your buddy.
Are you ready, man? John, quit swinging you killed Steven. I told you not to use the flail. Why couldn't you just be normal and use a mace like everybody else?
Oh, man.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You're swinging this big thing around. You're going to hit your own guys or you. There's no, imagine, and you know how tiring it gets to hold a mace.
Oh, dude.
How fatigued your arm gets. Mm-hmm. And okay, now make it a weight that's constantly moving and never able to be balanced.
Yeah.
There's nothing this is bringing to the table, right? And if you're basically taking a perfectly good spear or staff and cutting off like the last 4 inches and making it dangle with a burdensome weight. It's like, why not just have the extra 4 feet to whack someone at a further distance?
Okay, so why did anybody think this existed?
I think because it looks cool. So there was basically
just like dinosaurs.
Well, yeah, like basically it does exist in like 5 medieval drawings.
Okay.
Right? But in each of those, one is extremely late. Like we're getting into Renaissance era and they're drawing historical documents.
Okay.
So they don't know what they're doing. They're several hundred years removed. The others are all in places where you can question the historicity of the picture. Because medieval people were often bored. Mm-hmm. And they like to spice up their narratives a bit. And so if you are drawing the Crusaders fighting the Muslims, maybe, or some barbarians or something, maybe you give the Muslims some unique weapons and armor that makes them look a little more scary.
Yeah. Sure.
Like a flail. That's one of the places the flail. But also where the flail shows up, the guy has like a giant helmet with his nose is a spike. That comes off like 3 feet off his face. Which is not practical. Yeah. And then he's on some like weird like moving shield. It's like a shield with wheels on it. Mm-hmm. And you go, is any of this here?
How you gonna kiss? Right? How you gonna kiss your war bride with a 3-inch spike coming off your face?
Yeah, or your rolly shield,
right?
Or that you're like standing behind with a. And all of them are like that, right? And so really, what we have is a case of modern people going, "Wow, flails look cool," and there's a medieval artist going, "I know, right?" And then he paints one, and that's how it started.
Yeah,
and there's. I'm not saying, it's not to say that maybe someone didn't experiment with this at some point, mm-hmm. right? I think someone has pointed out to me when I was talking about this, that there's like one king of Norway maybe that one time had a tournament where he got some guys to play with flails. But that was just, as far as I can tell, they took like a farming thing and did it just for funds.
Well, there is an old school farming implement called a flail that you use to beat wheat out of the chaff.
Yeah, and it's great for beating wheat out of the chaff. It's not a very good war instrument.
Right. It's
like saying like, well, these shears I'm going to go into battle with. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. So the Metropolitan Museum of Art had like 4 of these for a while. And someone was like, they called them, and they were on display, and then they quietly, over the past like 6 years, have moved them away and put them in the back.
Well, good.
Because they realized that these were just 18th century, like Victorians and Elizabethans making up historical replicas of things that didn't exist. And then, there you go.
It's like we found their, graphic novels. And then assumed they were realistic. Yeah.
And that's what people will do with us. And that's what people have done from time immemorial, is take people's comic books and pretend they were talking about the real thing. Mm. I mean, 1,000 years from now, they may think we had an Iron Man suit or something, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we did not. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. No one changes. People always, in the Middle Ages, they had Renaissance fairs where they dressed up like the ancient Greeks. They did the same stuff. right? And so we're just doing it's the same thing all now. Flail, like there was like a cat of nine tails and stuff.
Mm-hmm. That was more of a torture device.
Yeah, there were torture devices when someone is tied up and they can't fight back, and you don't have to worry about hitting your teammates or whatever.
Yep,
that's a different matter. But in all of like the actual records of like duels and tournaments from the Middle Ages, no one uses the flail. Because they kept details like Sir Galahad won match 2 with a spear or whatever. They have swords, they use spears, various pole arms, axes, hammers, but never a flail because it doesn't work. Just use a mace. Don't cut off the end of your mace and tie it to a chain. That's not helpful.
In Skyrim, I'm a mace man.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in real life, I am a quarterstaff man.
Mm-hmm.
I like to keep my opponent at a healthy distance and just poke at them.
Something to that.
And that is because and I can be very effective with that. But because I've tried sword, and I just find that me and the other guy always just end up cutting our hands apart. Because I would train with this guy named David. He's an old guy, great swordsman. He's done it his whole life, but his philosophy was, we do not spar with safety equipment.
Oh.
And he believed that this was the correct way, because he said, listen, look at all these old fight books. They are not sparring with safety equipment. Why would we? And he says you don't learn it correctly if you have giant pads on your hands. Then you're not learn. He's like, the guard of the sword exists to protect your hand, and that's how you do it. And I could swing at him, no joke, full speed baseball swing, spinning around my head, and he'd always just be like clang clang clang. He'd never be hurt, and I'd be like, ow, and then he'd whack me in the head with his blunt sword, and I would fall on the ground. And I was like, this is not. And he was like 55. I mean, he was an older gentleman who was still in, and he had perfected this art of like sword fighting, and he could do things that were like, it never was like in the movies because the movies are unrealistic,
right?
But it was like, because the real fight happened so fast. You know, it makes sense. Sword fights
it's like 10 seconds.
Yeah, most of the time. If you're fighting with a sharp piece of metal, it goes pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I could beat him with a quarterstaff.
Okay.
And if he had one, I could be like, you know, so that's pretty good with that. But you know, a mace is fine too. But yeah, the flail never was real, and the Asian versions, like the nunchuck, is also not real.
Really?
Because the nunchuck has all the problems aforementioned of the flail, but also smaller and less useful.
But what about all these videos I've seen of Bruce Lee like whipping nunchucks around?
There was like, so some people in, I believe it was Japanese nobles who were at sort of not before the Meiji Revolution, but the Reformation or whatever you call it. But before that, when the aristocracy was there but sort of dwindling, and they weren't really fighting anymore, they played around with stuff, and one of the things they played around with was the nunchucks. Then they just sort of came up with them. It's like, hey, could this work?
Okay.
And sort of people liked them, but it was never used in any real historical combat scenario. And the whole mythology that people build up around them, they do the same thing for the East and the West. Like, this was a farming implement people took, and the peasants trained with them because they weren't allowed to hold weapons. Never happened, but none of that's real.
They didn't barter either.
Everything is fake. The nunchuck is even less useful than it has a shorter reach. And again, you've just basically, that guy Shad on Shadiversity, he does these things about this stuff. And he said a nunchuck is basically a good stick with erectile dysfunction. Like, just use the stick. Like, if you just had a stick of equivalent length, it's better. because it doesn't flop around and whack you. You know, it's like, why do you have... And he did all these tests, and he was like, watch, I will whack this with the nunchuck. Now I'll whack it with an equally weighted, equally length stick. And the power you can produce off the stick is so much greater, and you don't it doesn't bounce off and hit you. Which is the problem, because like if you swing in a nunchuck, if you've ever tried it, and you whack something with it, it bounces back and hits you like 3 out of 10 times, and then your knuckles are like, ow. So why is this?
The utility of the nunchuck is completely performative.
This is completely for spinning.
You can do some sweet katas with it, but...
It looks cool.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee did it because he was like, this will look great for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time anyone was really mass introduced to a nunchuck. And everyone was like, I want to be like Bruce Lee. And if you go to the Wikipedia on flails, and you see they now admit that they were maybe never ever used. They used to not. Like 4 years ago, they were like, oh yeah. But now they're like, historical evidence is scant.
I wonder how many nerds' dreams you just crushed.
Oh, so many. And if you look at like Kung Fu is maybe the most flagrant. They have what's called a 3-section staff, which is basically you take a bow staff and you cut it in thirds and tie each end with chains, like it's a long, stupid 3-part nunchuck. It's the Chinese retarded nunchuck. Because it's basically 2 large nunchucks sort of stuck together.
Yeah.
And you go to the history section, and the first thing is like, although there's no evidence to support it, blah, 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 blah. And then they talk about all the benefits. It's like, it's like you just took your nice spear, and now you've made it limp.
It's a big joke on the round eye.
Yeah, now you've made it limp, and then you try to use it. Like, why are you doing this? But everyone always is like, everyone used a flail. It's in every culture, and then you look back, it's like, no, everyone memed themselves into thinking flails were cool, and therefore real. But it was never. I think because the image of it is so like, you're so like a ball and chain, like a stick with a spiky ball on the end of a chain. You think that's something a barbarian would use.
Yeah.
That's like what the bad guy in Lord of the Rings uses or something, It's like a big, because it's sort of it's like a chaotic, it's like, I don't know, It just has a nice visual image, but it also has a nice image as the Klingon backlack or whatever that thing is that they would use.
Worf.
But that Worf would use. It was also stupid. It's got all these handles on it, and he's like, why not just have a spear? Why have this weird crescent spiky thing? It didn't make any. It looks cool, but it doesn't do anything. So that's something that everyone really thought was real for a long time. And then they were just like, well, maybe not. And a lot of this was brought up because people started LARPing so heavy.
Yeah.
And they would try to use it, and they're like, this is stupid. When they would dress up, when their history, and it has never been helpful for anyone. No one ever chooses it.
I'm sure this has been a painful segment for some of our listeners.
Yeah, nunchucks aren't real, and katanas are not the be-all end-all of swords, which is an even more controversial statement.
I'm a wakizashi man myself.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, just put it that every single European sword was better than the katana. That's just true.
Mm.
I don't know what to tell you. It's mainly because the Japanese didn't have a lot of iron on the island. Man. It's true. That's why
Japan.
That's what it was. That's why they had a lot of wood armor and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't have as much iron that was readily accessible on the surface level.
Yep.
In Japan, and so the iron they did get was slim, and they could only make thin swords with it, which was fine because you couldn't make a heavy suit of armor with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a whole suit of steel, then you need a big sword to,
Right.
So, but they didn't have that, so the katana was fine. But, yeah, so that's something that nunchucks are fake, and so is the flail, and so is the 3-section staff, and so is it's probably there's a lot more about history that's fake that we'll eventually figure out was fake.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of a lot of proposed war formations that they write about in history books were seldom, if ever, used. Or maybe in very specific circumstances.
Right.
Like the phalanx seems to be used a lot. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the other ones, it's like, we need to get enough historians together and try this and see if this would actually function.
I've always thought that the idea of lining up and shooting each other with muskets in lines and just seeing which side dropped first. That never really made sense. Like, really? Maybe that's how it started, but don't you think it devolved into something else at some point? I don't know. That just seems kind of sketchy to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's largely, I believe that is a good example, because that doesn't seem to have been the way. Like, they would march to battle, but then when the battle broke out, there was a lot more motion.
I think this is a case of assuming people in olden times were stupid.
Yeah. Assuming, or like they were like so, or the opposite, that they were so much more disciplined than we are, that they would just stand there and get in a line and get mowed down.
Right.
But people are the same. And so they're like, this is dumb. I'm going to hide behind that tree.
Yeah, they may have done it once,
Right. Or you might use it if you were going to, like a volley, you fire a volley of rounds. You're like, bam, bam, kneel, bam, bam. But then that's going to break pretty quickly.
Sure. As
you engage with the other side. And then your movements are going to be a lot more chaotic after that. I think people take the initial... It's like if you go to watch an MMA match and you see how they stand there in the first 3 seconds and you extrapolate that to the whole match.
Sure, yeah.
I think that's what's going on. Mm-hmm. Because that, like, you're right, that doesn't make any sense that they would do that. There's a lot of stuff in history that's not how we think. And the nunchuck / flail is one of them. It's just everyone just memed themselves into believing they were real. And they even ended up in museums. And I always think about that whenever I see something at a museum. I say, is this just a meme? Maybe. Maybe the loom was just a meme.
I'm glad I learned that tonight.
Yeah. So anyway, I just had to get that off my chest because I was arguing with people about flails recently. And I was like, this is not real. And they took it hard because people really like nunchucks. They want nunchucks to be. They're like, no, nunchaku.
Right.
Nunchaku. They're the thing. And I'm like, no, try them. So much of this is just people don't try it.
Yeah. No, I tried it one time and I hit myself. And I said, this is a stupid weapon.
And people say, well, that's just because you don't practice with it. Right? But the point is, why would you require a weapon that takes like months of practice when you just could have a bat?
Yeah, I can whack you with a stick on the first
try.
I
can whack you with a stick the first. See, here's the thing. Every weapon until the gun was a stick plus.
Yeah.
It's like a spear is a stick plus a pointy bit, and a sword is a shorter stick with a longer pointy bit, and an arrow is a little spear, and then a axe is a stick with a thing. It's all just a stick. It's all just fancy stick fighting. Because man is made to hold a club.
Yeah.
Like cats have claws, dogs have teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings pick up a stick and you do it. A 2-year-old knows how to do it instinctively.
Yep.
They pick up a thing and they whack. And your shoulder is designed for that motion, and it all works. It's your instinctive thing. Right? And so you don't need a lot of training. If you have to invent a weapon that is so hard to wield that you have to like retrain your body to do what it doesn't make any sense. You're just going to use the stick. It's like, and all the weapons are just like, here's a stick. Here's a longer stick. Here's a stick with one kind of pointy bit. Here's a stick with another kind of pointy bit. Here's a stick you can fly through the air. It's all just stick fighting.
It's deep.
And
man.
Yeah, it's all just been stick fighting until the gun, which still has a general shape of a stick, and is often made of a lot of wood.
Sure.
But yeah, everything is just so that is your instinctual defense thing is just picking up a stick and whacking. and people are great at it, and it's super effective. A man with a stout stick can beat most animals.
Do you see the Indian farmer riots where all those farmers just had sticks and they were just beating the tar out of the local police with sticks? Yeah. And it was, they put a hurting on them, man.
Yeah, I mean, a stick is really hard to beat. It took a long time to get better than the stick. And especially if you add a little pointy bit on the end of the stick, or a little heavy bit on the end of the stick.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like I said, just make the stick really long. I with an 8-foot quarterstaff can really do some damage. Because we did test with this, and I set up like a jug of water, like a gallon of water, and you whack it with a sword, and it cuts it, and that's fine. You whack it with the baseball bat, and it falls over. But if you get a big swing from that 8-foot thing, and you whip it around like over your head, like it just disintegrates.
Awesome.
The plastic just flies apart, just a mist of water, and then it's gone. And that's if you're just swinging it. But the main thing you do, because it's a lot faster, is you just poke with it, and you can hit really quite hard just poking with a stick.
Yeah.
And if you catch someone in the head, in the face, with a long stick, it's very bad.
Yeah, you're gonna bust up the orbital bone of their eye socket and all that stuff. Yeah.
And at no point in stick fighting do you go, wait a minute, my stick's too long. Right. I need to cut it in half and tie it together with strings. Hold on, I gotta tie my stick together with strings.
Yeah.
And what? Like that never. So yeah, nunchucks are fake, and we all we've gotten so away from tradition in olden times that we don't realize that would be a stupid idea. And then you realize, if we are so stupid as to think that, how much else are we misinterpreting about the past and how they would have done things? Because we are so out of their frame of reference that we think, nunchucks. And they would look at that and go, that's dumb.
So I've been training with guns this whole time, but really, if I want to be the warlord of the future, I need to start training with a giant stick.
It's true. That's true. Maybe in the future we have space sticks. But I guess that's what a lightsaber is supposed to be, right?
I'm going to do some soul searching on this topic.
Sticks. Anyway, tell us about your response to your Dear Abby, your relationship advice.
Oh, we got a really good email here from Havarti McFly. Havarti sends the following. Enjoying Smokestack's new dating segment. Don't forget about those of us who are a little older and have some experience, but who may have spent most of their 20s thinking too much about black holes and not enough about relationships. I'm just going to pause here and say that sounds
well, isn't that the same thing?
Okay.
I mean, think about it. You can have a relationship.
Now we're going to pass over that. We're just going to
with physics.
I'm just going to keep going.
Okay.
One specific topic that I would be interested in hearing about is age differences, because I look so young and I tend to attract younger women. What can and cannot work? And he also sends us a pretty good little breakup story. Once in college, a girl broke up with me in a speech that included the line, "Sometimes I just want to go to Burger King." He explains that during this period of his life, his diet was exceedingly restrictive. He says, I cook myself.
Was this in high school, you said?
I think this was probably in undergrad. I'm interpreting here. He would cook very Spartan meals for himself. He's on some diet restrictions. So a desire to go to Burger King at the time seemed like an insurmountable obstacle for the relationship. And I didn't even think to protest. I just thought, well, there's no way this is going to happen, so I guess this is the end. And he says that was probably for the best, though, because she sounds like she went crazy, as most, females do. But he also added that any ladies listening, he's now matured, and he will go to Burger King with you. So I thought that was a really good email. So let's back up and address some of his questions. If there's like a particular female you're interested in, I don't think age is that big a deal. Once you're past 20 or so, it kind of stops mattering, and then once you're past 30, it really doesn't matter. I mean, it's just if you're in your late 20s and say you're I don't know, if you're an academic, you've got a doctorate or whatever, and you want to date some girl that's like freshman undergrad, she's probably gonna annoy the crap out of you, because she's immature. And so it wouldn't work for that reason, but it's not like a numbers thing. So, instead of thinking about age, I would think about like station in life, experience. Has she paid bills before? Or is she just going to annoy you with how immature she is? Because that's really the issue you're going to run into. But that you can only consider that in a case-by-case basis. Now, I will point out the whole line about I tend to attract ... That's kind of lame. We don't care who you tend to attract. Who are you going after, dog? You don't
Right.
You don't just like sit around waiting for women to just fall into your lap. I mean, he's probably pretty handsome from the sound of this.
Oh, all of our listeners are exceedingly handsome and/or pretty and beautiful.
Well, that goes
every
without saying.
one of them.
That goes without saying. But you can't just sit there and wait for females to sort of float by and glom onto you. You should decide what you're looking for and then pursue that. So that would be.
Well, the Victorian. If you wanted a number, which I agree with you, it doesn't matter that much. If you wanted a number, the Victorian era used to say half your age plus 7.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a good little rule.
So if you were 80, 47.
Right.
And below that, it was a little like weird. But it works more. It begins to break down as you get very old.
Yeah.
But as you get very old, maybe you should think about not dating anymore.
Yeah.
If you have to restart. Like if you are Bill Gates.
Try to stay in the same decade, maybe.
If you're Bill Gates and you get divorced at 66 or whatever, they had a statement that was like, we're looking for, he looks forward to meeting new people or something like that. Like, if you're 66, just maybe don't. Maybe don't.
Yeah.
Maybe go be a monk or something.
Yeah, just hang it up. Although it would probably be good for all of us if Bill Gates had somebody to distract him.
I think he's going to pull a Caitlyn Jenner and turn into a woman.
I thought he was going to hook up with the Queen.
No. Well, maybe. That would be... But yeah, so for your half your age plus 7. So let's pick an age for this guy. We don't know how old he is.
Let's say he's 28.
28. So 14 plus 7 is 21.
There you go.
That's your
Seems a little
that
arbitrary.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a little arbitrary, but that's what the Victorians used to say.
Most 21-year-old girls are kind of annoying, but if you wanted a number, you got a number there, pal.
Right. If you wanted a number, there's your trad number.
Mm-hmm.
In as much as Victorian age is trad.
So we would love to hear more about all your dating issues and questions. So you can contact us at our website, mapsoc.org, mapsoc.org.
Yeah, who's even more about the age question was the Puritans.
Really?
The Puritans felt like you should really keep it within 2 or 3 years.
I didn't know that.
The Puritans are weird on the sex. The people think that the Puritans were actually like super sexual. Mm-hmm. Among the husband and wife, they seemed to be very intimate and encourage that.
Sweet.
But they had some weird like if you were in some parts of the if you were beyond 30, if you were a man over 30 and not married, you couldn't own property. Because like you're weird.
Yeah.
No one is, and then there was one place.
So a man over 30? I mean that's
yeah.
I mean I know it was a little different then. Well, clock's ticking, Havarti.
Yeah, and then and there was one place in like I don't remember the name, but it was one town where if you were caught masturbating, there was a capital offense.
Woo!
They had some weird, but they also were like really like it was this weird grab bag of sexual ethic because people equate them with like the Shakers or whatever who didn't have sex at all, or the Quakers but no, the Puritans had some interesting sexual mores, which maybe is the trad way to go. I don't know, but they would. Anyway, yeah. So there's your number, and it doesn't matter that much, except look for someone who's ready for the same things you are.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get married, presumably you do, and you're ready to start a family, or if you're not, if you want to, like, travel around or whatever, get someone at the same level.
Yeah.
That's
I was talking to Muffins about some of this stuff this week, and one thing that really occurred to me is that you don't really need a woman that shares a lot of interests with you.
No, you don't need. They should share none, actually.
I feel like that's sort of a meme, and really most of my interests, if I did them with Muffins, it would sort of ruin it.
Well, that's why I say ready.
Too. Yeah,
ready for the same things that like man and woman go together for. Like
yeah.
Not like you shouldn't do like hobbies with your wife is not real.
Right.
That's
Although
never
I will
been
say,
real.
I took my wife fishing one time in a canoe, and she doesn't like fishing at all. So she talked, and I said, and I fished, and I caught bass. And it actually worked out pretty well. So, maybe there's something to that after all. Yeah.
One time.
We haven't made a habit of it, but it was a nice afternoon.
Right. It's a nice thing to do sometimes, but your wife and you are going to have separate interests, and she's not going to want to sit around and listen to you discuss how Shiba is the new Dogecoin.
Yeah.
Or your crypto holdings.
And she doesn't need to be interested in thinking about black holes for an entire decade of your life either.
Yeah, you don't need to. I don't know any couple that really does those things.
Yeah.
Like on TV shows, like I need someone that has the same interest. I've never seen that happen. You get along, but it's in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about, that doesn't mean you don't talk to each other a lot and like joke and have fun. But like you don't.
Well, it's kind of fun to talk to each other about the weird things that each other do, and that I don't even understand why anybody would do that. But you really enjoy it, and it's kind of fun to hear about, like what my wife thinks about watercolors and things like that.
If you want someone with similar interests to you, that's a man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Women are interested in different things, and they're supposed to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, and so just. Don't look for someone with similar interests because that's not going to happen. Or if they do, maybe you should question them about their birth gender.
Oh, that's so great.
Or something, right? So,
oh, man.
Yeah.
None of this was in the dating outline. This is all just magic happening on the show right now.
I know.
Such good advice.
Well, it's always, yeah. And
we're so wise, dude.
Well,
can't stand it.
Yeah. I'm just, there's a lot of things that people have in their heads about what marriage is like.
That's true.
That isn't the case.
Yeah, after you're married for a decade or two, you learn a thing or two.
Yeah. Yeah. And what else is it? Your wife actually probably will enjoy you not trying to rope her into stuff.
Right. Like she wants to do her own stuff.
Do you want to watch the Hallmark movie with her every day? No.
Nah.
Right. And she doesn't need to know about your musings on exotic physics.
Right.
Right. And that's fine.
I show my wife the pictures of the bass I caught, and she says, "Oh, that's a nice big one."
Right.
Congratulations. And then, and she shows me her watercolors.
Yeah. I had to buy some stuff with crypto one time just to prove to my wife it was real. She was like, "What are you doing?" And I would try to explain it to her, and her eyes would just gloss over, and she'd be like, "That sounds so fake." And I said, "I know. Yes."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Okay, I'm going to make a purchase or something just to show you that something can happen." And she was like, "Okay." And so that's just, men and women are different and they're supposed to be, and they have different interests. And we need to go back to the Puritan trad thing, speaking of them, and in church, men and women should sit on opposite sides.
I was thinking about that recently too.
That's another thing the Muslims do right.
So we, at my church, we sing out of hymnals, right? And so there's the, I guess it's the tenor part and the bass part. I don't know much about music, to be honest, but I would like to be able to, I can't read music. Mm-hmm. I would like to be able to sing the lower parts, but I don't sit near men that sing them. So I don't have anybody to latch onto. So I just end up having to sing the higher part.
Yeah.
Because that's all I can hear. But if all the men sat together, we could sing the bass parts together. And the women could sing the tenor parts. It would be great. It would sound so good.
This is why the parts of music have died in congregations, because they aren't. This is in choirs. You segregate the altos from the sopranos precisely for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
So they can latch onto each other.
Yep.
If you mix them all together, they all just end up singing the same part, which is usually the highest part.
Yep.
Because you always, that's just a musical rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to compose something, the melody is usually picked out on the highest note.
And there's like two guys at our church that are, musical and can read it and can just look at the part and sing it. And I'm jelly, and I want to be able to do that, but I can't. I don't have the skill.
Well, there's that issue that the men and women are all together in the altos. We should more go from not just, but we should separate people into their singing range.
Yeah.
However, another thing that people have missed is shape notes. Have I talked about shape notes before?
I don't think we have. No.
This was a thing that probably most people do not know about shape notes, but they were great and very trad. They were developed in the 1700s for congregational singing, precisely because people were like, this whole reading the musical staff thing is too difficult to learn for a lot of people. They don't have time to put into it, right? And to give you an example of how I sometimes will tell people that my upbringing was like 100 years in the past, like culturally.
Yeah.
In some ways, because I would say every day before school, during school, we would go and have chapel, and we would all sing a cappella. These really old hymns in a genre of music or a musical tradition called sacred harp singing.
Yeah, I know about this, dude. You really did grow up in the 100 years in the past.
I know, and that's the sacred harp singing, which is where you do it's hard to explain, but it was an offshoot of that. And the idea of the shape notes is like, okay, well, get rid of the staff, right? Just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, makes each of those a different shape. Like you have a circle, and I think that was like do, and you have a square, and maybe that was, and then do, re, mi, fa, and every one of them will be a different, like a diamond or a triangle the other way. And then they would also be, in some cases, color-coded, like green, red. And so you'd have this plane of paper, and your note would be like you just have one line. So like, here's the soprano line, here's the alto line. And you just know I'm on line 3 or I'm on line 2. And you would, in a very short amount of practice, you would know like, okay, that one means up here, that one means down there. And you could just go through and sing it fine. And it was but I haven't seen I think shape notes have largely fallen out of practice.
No, that's gone, man. I don't think anybody does that anymore.
But I used to use, that's how old school my thing was. I was also in a school that used to actually wash your mouth out with soap sometimes.
Based.
Like they'd take a bar of soap and scrub it on your tongue. And that never happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened to this kid named Jerome for going around claiming he was a test tube baby. And he wasn't, and he was lying, and he wouldn't stop lying, and we all knew he wasn't a test tube baby because we knew his parents, and they would say, "You're not a test tube baby."
Were his parents scientists?
No.
No. Okay.
There was no validity to this at all. He had just seen it in a movie and decided that was cool.
Sure.
And I found it. Yeah, here it is online. Do is a triangle, re is a half circle, mi is a diamond, fa is another kind of shapy triangle. And then so is the circle, la is a square, upside down triangle is T, and then the other do is you're back to the triangle again.
There you go.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and you just have it was perfectly fine. I think people did studies and they found that shape notes people learned to sight read significantly better.
I believe that.
And faster.
Yeah.
Because the staff is great for it's precisely the correct instrument for recording music for multiple instruments and like the piano and stuff. It's perfect. But for like teaching a congregation of people that are not musically inclined and have limited time to learn, it's not the best.
Yeah.
So we need to bring back shape notes and this sacred harp. I always say heart, but sacred is because I have too much Catholic now. I say sacred heart, but it's sacred harp, and the harp is not. Listen, this is how. It's not an actual instrument. It's in here. It's in the soul. The sacred harp. See,
it's touching.
That's what it was. And there'd be some guy, and they'd do their hand up and down real big to keep time, and then the whole congregation would get along with that, and so everyone would be singing and all moving their hand up and down and swaying as if they were also the conductor, and that's how you would all keep time.
Cool. And
it was a strange thing, but like I say, it was a place out of time. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Relationship things.
Why we have to split men and women apart? You can either do that or you can go back to shape notes. One of the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do we have time? I've got some further notes on our relationship talk if we have time for it.
Yeah, we got time. We always have time.
Good. Oh, good.
There's always time enough for love.
So we ended the last segment with ordering your life in an advantageous way, and so we'll open this one with be appealing. So these are what I in my experience find the top 2 plus 1, 2 main ones and 1 tertiary one to being appealing to women. And so we're gonna, before you get into like style and sports and I don't know, all sorts of things that different women have different opinions about, these things I feel are fundamentally attractive to all well-adjusted women. And those things are leadership, courage, and bonus points for dominion.
Okay, and explain the last one.
So, dominion briefly means exercising some mastery of nature. Mastery of yourself and of nature, okay? It's sort of creation mandate sort of stuff. But we'll get to that after we do leadership and courage.
Okay.
So, leadership. This is where your bros and your community that we talked about last week can really help you out. Somewhere in your life, you need to be able to demonstrate a level of leadership, an ability of leadership that women can see. You don't have to be George Patton here. It's not a high bar. It's actually very easy to do this, and you can find a way to do it that suits your aptitudes. Just a couple of quick examples. One would be just organize an event or a trip among your friends and your community for people in your peer group to go do something cool together. You can go on some sort of adventure. You can do some sort of charitable engagement to go help some people in need. You can organize some sort of a social event like a dance or a whatever. A swap meet. I mean, it can be cheesy. It doesn't even have to be like, throw out the idea that any of this needs to be cool. Okay?
Right.
Just check cool at the door. Cool does not matter. Okay?
Correct.
What you need is fun. And almost anything can be fun if you have a good attitude. This is all sounding very cheesy, but it's true.
One of the things I recommend is a scavenger hunt.
Yeah, man.
They're tons of fun.
Yes.
Organize a scavenger hunt. People love that.
Yeah. Oh, dude, so much fun for really any age.
For any age, but like people dating couples, dating age, this is great.
Yeah.
Organize
That's a great idea. Another way you can show leadership is to teach or mentor publicly. So at your church, you can teach a Sunday school class, either for other adults or for kids. If you're particularly good at a certain academic subject, start a tutoring service, right? Tutor kids in your social circle, and do this publicly. You don't have to charge money for it, but you can. But just do it to show that you can lead, you can benefit other people, you can organize things. You could lead a raid on an enemy village and return with many war trophies, also a suitable option. Which leads us into our second quality, which would be courage. Okay? So, and this, when Muffins and I went on our first date, and she didn't even know it was a date at the time, but I had intentions. I organized a trip for a bunch of people in our group to go caving.
I was just about to tell a story about a cave. This is all coming together.
Oh, okay, good. So I got everybody together, and I sent out emails, and I hyped this big thing up. I said, listen, we're going to go caving. I organized the accommodations and all the travel, show up at this time. I got the tour together, took all these people, 6 hours away, in a van, and took them to this really cool cave, and we were crawling around, and all the girls were terrified, and I made a big point to comfort poor nervous Muffins when she needed it, which is what you're supposed to do. So you're saying
you organized an event to terrorize her,
yes,
so that you could comfort her.
Okay, here's the thing: girls like to feel scared.
They do. They do.
But
we just need to be clear. You need something that will safely scare them.
Yes, safely. Like, we weren't ever really in any danger, but in this example, you take a female and that's never been underground and you bring her into a cave, and not just like some goofy tourist cavern, but we're talking about real caving, like headlamps and helmets, and you're crawling across ledges and pretty gnarly stuff. I mean, safe, but intimidating to the point where she feels kind of nervous. She needs some reassurance. She needs to be told that it's going to be okay. And
here's the thing: if she goes on this with you, it's a sign that she is into you.
Oh yeah,
because that's one of the things that a woman will stop doing once you're married. Because she's not gonna. She's like, we've already established.
We've been through this.
I do not want to go in a cave anymore.
Right.
That's something that the woman is doing to show that she's trying to do something you want to do.
Yeah.
So that's already a filter. If she agrees to go, she's already into you.
Very, very true. And then she's going to be nervous. And if she's showing signs of nervousness, she wants you to tell her it's going to be okay, to show her how to get through it, to lead by example, right? So when we did this caving thing, I made sure to do those things, and there were some weird, like, little tiny optional tunnel passages where you had to blow all the air out of your lungs in order to get through the certain tight spot. And I made sure to do all those things and look very brave. And it worked because we're married now. So that ratifies all my advice. Some other ideas.
Now make sure when you do this that it is the thing that you're not going to actually get her or you killed in. Yeah. That will damper it a lot.
Right.
If you get into a place where you have actual danger and that will ruin it.
Well, apparently, in this certain little tiny spot I squeezed through, one guy got tickled and started laughing and broke several ribs. Laughing while trying to wriggle through this hole. But that did not happen to me. It actually went really well, and I looked like a brave dude. So, it's a gamble, but it's a gamble that can pay off. But you need to, because your courage demonstrates that you're going to be able to, along with leadership, provide for her and for your children, that you're going to be able to stand up for them, that you're going to be able to do the things that a man is expected to do in a relationship. So this is like you're demoing your man ability, okay, with leadership and courage. So some other ideas that just kind of popped into my head, maybe you can throw in a few. Take her on a flying lesson or on a hot air balloon ride. Right? I don't know what your budget looks like, but that could be very effective. A little lower budget, kayaking or rafting. Getting out on the water, things that, and there's like deep symbolism stuff here, like underground down into we're going down into the underworld. Okay. Scary.
Right.
You're on the water. Water is a symbol of chaos. It's very scary, right? You're taking her out away from the firmness of the land out onto the water. Okay. The symbolism of these things, can just consider them when checking your dates. Okay, it's always applicable. You can take some folks.
Don't just hang out and watch Netflix. Go do stuff.
Like don't do safe, boring things. Right. I mean, once your relationship is established, of course you're going to do safe, boring things together. But when you're trying to like impress a girl, really try to impress her. Don't just. Taking a girl to coffee is great and you can talk and whatever, but that shouldn't be the only thing you're doing. And that shouldn't be like your opening move, right?
Right.
You need to go a little bit bigger than that. So backcountry hiking, if your girl's at all outdoorsy, that would be great. Get a few people together to go on on a hiking trip. Spend a night or two out in the wilderness, you know. And then, so that's point 2, courage. Point 3, dominion. And so this, I would consider this bonus points, especially if you're a little bit younger and you haven't had the opportunity in life to like build a career, so to speak. You know, most of us have jobs where we're not, we don't own the business that we're working in. We're sort of working for somebody else, and we don't have the opportunity to exercise a lot of dominion. And so that, by that I mean like mastery of nature, taking something out of the earth and adding our work and skill to it to make it valuable, and then selling it, or just using our abilities and skills to control and order the world around us for the benefit of ourselves and others. Okay. Most of us don't have that sort of job, which is a shame, but it's the truth. So what you need to do, you probably have some kind of lame job that you don't even enjoy, but balance that job with a productive hobby or a passion project. Okay. Just, you've got to demonstrate that you're not just a consumer, right? Because we live in a society of consumers that just consume all day. Okay. You want to set yourself, because a man is not a consumer. A man is a provider, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, you use a job to provide, and like women get that. It's good. You know, he's got a stable income, blah, 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 but it's not romantic. It's not necessarily masculine in it, aesthetically, philosophically masculine. So have something else, cultivate some other sort of part of your life where you're not just consuming and working a lame job. Here's some examples. Hunting or fishing. Like, you're going out into the wild, you're harvesting animals, bringing them home and eating them. Okay? That's cool. All right? Some sort of a craft. Woodworking, metalworking. Just make things and sell them online. You don't even have to make money doing this. Just the fact that you make a thing that somebody would want to buy and then you sell it to them. Great. Okay? Some sort of a self-owned side hustle. Okay? Yeah, you work a lame job, but you also do photography gigs. You also do, it could be anything, any sort of side job where you're using your skills and your passions and your aptitudes to make money or build a business where in the future you could make money. And that can also apply to intellectual and artistic pursuits. Maybe you are a writer, so you work a lame job, but you also write a sweet blog where you talk about philosophy like Chungus does, which I always enjoy his essays. Or you have artistic pursuits or things like that. You need to be using your skills, your gifts to do something cool. Okay? Exercise dominion. So those are the 3 make yourself appealing fundamentals: leadership, courage, and dominion.
Yes, those are very good.
So Muffins was telling me a story. A guy when she was younger, in the dating world, a guy that was chasing her around for a long time. She didn't really have any interest in, and this went on for a long time. But she said that they came into some sort of circumstance. I think it was some sort of an event. He was putting on some big event and showed all this cool leadership, that suddenly she changed her mind and she was like, oh, he is kind of interesting. And you can turn, like, the first thing you have to do, and we'll get into this in the next section here, is you have to set the tone. You have to set the expectations. You have to cue a girl to consider you as a mate. Because unlike men, or at least this is the way I was. It's like every girl around me, I was assessing in those terms, right?
Right.
Would I or would I not date/marry this girl? I don't know that girls do that automatically, or at least not all of them do. You have to cue them to do that. So if you are interested in somebody, you don't just keep that to yourself, okay? You send a signal. You don't have to make a big deal out of it, but you need to make it clear in a chill and manly way that you are interested romantically in the girl. And what that does is that cues her to size you up, right? And I know that's intimidating, like, hey, girl, size me up. But if she doesn't size you up, she's not going to make up her mind. So you'll never get a yes or a no, which is the same thing as a no.
Right. Same thing as a no.
Right. So you got to, step up to the plate and get sized up. So you need to share in some way your interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not only does that set the tone with this particular girl you're interested in, but it also sets the tone with other girls around, because they're going to see you being very clear in your intentions to this one, and clear in your signals like, hey, I'm a viable dude. I'm putting myself out there for your assessment. That's going to change the context of all the women that you're interacting with, right? All the women that are watching, because they're all talk. And that's how you go from, that's the first step to going from just a dude to a potential mate.
Right. We're helping friend-zoned people that are incels.
Right. We got to get
solving
you out
the problem.
The friend zone. And the first thing you have to do to get out of the friend zone is to say, hey, I don't want to be in the friend zone.
This is the whole problem with the friend zone and the incel people, is that they don't understand that women do not, that it's context dependent. You have to cue them to think like, oh, maybe him.
Right.
Because that's just not how they operate.
Right. Unless you're incredibly handsome, in which case they will immediately size you up.
But that's almost nobody.
Right.
Because it's like those, if you looked at how women rate men, it's like women.
We're pretty much all ugly.
Women consider like the top 0.1% of men handsome, and everyone else is like the average.
Yeah. Most men are ugly, to their wives. At least not. That's the thing, is once they love you, they think you're handsome.
Right.
It's backwards, but that's the way it works. So you need to be able to set the tone early, and it's a lot easier to do this early on. The longer you wait, the harder it is. So you need to be able to, and just get it in your head day one. Say, hey, after you had some conversation, say, hey, I would really like to spend some more time with you. Can I have your number? Can I call you? And say it, and even if you're a dork and you flub it, you're still a dork that has some confidence and knows what he wants, and that still puts you ahead of most guys. Right?
It's true.
So you need to set,
at least I think, like I said,
tone.
I have very little dating experience.
Well, I have tons of it.
Yeah.
So I can tell you the times where I didn't set the tone early, I was least successful. And the times where I came right out of the gate signaling my interest boldly are overwhelmingly the most successful attempts.
There you go.
So that is your dating advice.
Dear Smokestack,
segment.
Again, helping people, preventing terrorism, saving people from the being sucked into 4chan forever.
Yep.
You're just helping.
So next show we can talk about how to get dumped.
Oh, yeah, that's also never happened to me.
Because it's gonna. Well, it happened to you once.
Well, I wasn't really dumped. She just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Vanished.
I don't know. She was just gone.
Missing girlfriend 411.
Yeah, missing. She was just poof. Her and her whole family.
Yeah.
I went to the house and it was just empty. I was like, well, that's weird.
So send me your dating questions, so I'll have more things to talk about. I've got a few ideas in this little outline, but I'd much rather answer questions in future segments.
Right.
So are we gonna? Hey, we should probably just address this. Are we gonna have a show next week? Because I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll have a show.
I'm not sure if maybe I'll record something in case if a show doesn't happen next week, it'll be okay. It's just because I'm lost in the desert and we missed the opportunity to record.
Yeah, but we'll probably have a show.
We'll probably will, but if it don't freak out.
Right.
Don't freak out.
And by when he means lost in the desert, as we all know, Smokestack is a clone. His memories and his life is implanted every night in bed.
It's true.
And his DNA is breaking down. He's lasted longer than a lot of them. So he needs a period. He's going to have to die.
I've had a good run.
And the next clone is almost out of the hopper, and we have to take a while to upload the memories of this one into the new one.
Mm-hmm.
But please, no one remind him of this, because it's very. I mean, if you were just walking around today and someone was like, "Hey, you died last week,"
yeah,
it messes up your workflow.
Mm-hmm.
for people to handle that information. So we usually don't tell the new clones that they are the new clone until about month 3.
Yeah.
That's how we were. So everyone just please keep it, as it goes. But I think we'll probably have a show, and I think it'll be good.
Okay.
Maybe if Smokestack is unavailable, we'll have a guest co-host.
There you go.
A guest guy to come on, and we'll just talk about stuff. But anyway, so we talked about a thing which doesn't exist. We thought it did. Then we told people how to succeed in romance. And now we're going to talk about something that you probably think maybe doesn't exist, but really does. And do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
Ball lightning.
Oh.
Ball lightning. Today, I want to talk about ball, because I think I figured out ball lightning. Cool. I really think I think I have, I won't say I've scientifically proven what ball lightning is, but I put together enough threads that I think I figured out ball lightning. First of all, have you ever been near a lightning strike?
No.
I have been sort of close to a lightning strike. Like, let's say within 40 yards.
Okay. I was probably that close, but I was inside a building, so I didn't get the full measure.
It's not like a bzz. It's much closer to like a...
Yeah.
It's a big thing. It's like a mortar shell. I was near a tree, and it just sort of exploded. Like... So, normal lightning, occurs... Everyone knows normal lightning, but in case you don't, warm air going up meeting cold air. The cold air high up in the atmosphere has some ice particles in it, and the warm air has water droplets in it, and the water droplets and the ice rub up against each other, just like your socks on a carpet. Just making static.
Mm-hmm.
They're rubbing electrons off each other, and they do this a lot, and they do for hours and hours and hours, and they're tumbling over each other. And when enough charges build up, pow! Just like you getting a static shock at the dentist office because of their weird 70s carpet, which steals your electrons. The normal lightning is just a big version of that. And that's why I quit going to the dentist I was going to, because every time I touched the doorknob, I would get shocked. And I told him, and he was like, I don't know what's wrong. It doesn't happen to anybody else. And I was like, there's something wrong with your thing, or maybe I just shed electrons more easily. I don't know. But at my new dentist, I don't get shocked. So, but you get the positive ions at the top of the cloud. A lot of people don't know this part. The ions actually separate, and usually the positive ones go to the top, and the negative ones go to the bottom. And lightning comes from the two. It can come from either of those. You can have a positive lightning stroke or a negative lightning stroke. And the positive one is way, way, way more powerful than the bottom one. The negative one. About 10 times more. So like when you see the little lightning strike, like psh, psh, and then when you see a big one, like, pa-dow! That's almost certainly the positive stroke. So like a negative stroke will have about 30,000 amps.
Mm-hmm.
Positive stroke will be about 300,000 amps.
Woo!
Big difference. Now, fortunately, 95% of all lightning strikes are negative strokes. But the big kapow ones, the ones that you like hear, like,
mm-hmm.
That's the positive strokes. That's normal lightning. But what about ball lightning? Okay. So ball lightning has, if you're generous about what you consider a report, you could say that it's been reported since ancient times. Of course, they didn't use that terminology, and they were talking about balls of light moving through the sky and like fiery. Maybe it's tough. It's like a maybe that's what they're saying. Maybe they're not. But the earliest account that's pretty confidently like ball lightning, comes from a town in Olivia, southern Spain.
Okay.
October 18, 1619. And it was documented in the monastery of Pi, P-I, like the number. So at this point I read this and I was going to say something like herpa-derpa-derp. Isn't it interesting? It was observed at a monastery, herpa-derp, spiritual location, herpa-derpa-derp. Right? Like I usually do.
I was thinking ball and pie.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to be like, herpaderpaderp, make these connections. I thought, no, wait a minute. Wait, Sumo. You can't just trundle out that canard at everything. Right? Of course it was recorded at a monastery because those were the places where people recorded stuff. Right? It's a selection heuristic. Nothing weird about it at all.
It's very self-aware of you.
But then my initial suspicion was instantly confirmed when I read the next 5 sentences. Listen and see if you agree. So it was observed by 3 people and described as a rolling, burning vessel and a ball of fire. It appeared following a lightning flash and showed mainly horizontal motion. It crossed a wall, went through the chapel, and then burned an image of Our Lady of Rebollet, which was then Our Lady of Pi, which is an image of the Virgin Mary. It just attacked her, burnt her rough, and then overturned a cross. Flew up the stairs. One of the monks that saw it was so terrified from it, he dropped dead, and then it went out the window.
Dude.
And I was like, well, now I feel like it is a spiritual thing. It attacked the Virgin Mary, flipped over a cross, and killed a monk. And a ruff, I had to look up what a ruff was, because I wasn't familiar with that. The ruff, R-U-F-F, was that big, stupid, lacy collar people would wear in Shakespeare times. Okay. Apparently they put one of these on like a statue of the Virgin Mary because they dressed her up in modern clothes. And people were bored, as I said. So they put a ruff on the Virgin Mary. Now, I will say, I looked up a picture of this thing. And at first I was like, well, obviously, if that was a spiritual thing, it'd be some sort of demonic thing because it's attacking the cross and stuff. But then I saw this statue and I was like, well, maybe Mary's just mad at how ugly this is. Because it's not a good statue. The people of Spain were not Michelangelo. Let me just say that. And it was a wooden thing. It was hung up on the wall and it looked like something I could do, which isn't saying much because I'm not a sculptor or a carver. And so I think maybe Mary was up in heaven like, Jesus, can you just get rid of that? I don't like how they think I look like that. And so that's what it was. But this source is important because while there are, as I said, older sources, this is one of the earliest, if not the earliest, primary source from a guy who had like direct correspondence and relationships with the witnesses. Okay. The other sources are mostly secondary, where they're like, and this ball lightning happened 100 years ago, attested to by such and such and so. Right? For example, there's a report from a fellow named Atkins, not related to the diet, writing in 1712, of a ball lightning that occurred in 1556, so like 160 years apart, which he describes as a fiery sulfurous globe rolling through the parlor door. And this is strange. They tend to go through the doors. They tend to use doors. Ooh. A bit weird. But when the story was retold, like 50 years later, 60 years later, like 1779, by a guy named Rudder, he leaves out the sulfurous globe bit and just says it entered through the parlor door and forced its way out the window on the opposite side of the room. So you can see the story changes when you have these secondary sources and whatever. It's just like a little game of telephone. So this Our Lady of Pi one is nice because the people involved are telling him directly and they're writing it down, and we know the author, so we can have some sort of verification who this guy was. He was Pierre Jean Pocard. He was born in 1560 at Valencia, which was the city, and belonged to something called the Low Calensian secular clergy, which I don't quite know what that means. It sounds a little like the modern equivalent of like a deacon, or maybe like a guy who helps administer the sacraments, like he hands out the host or something, or helps with the baptism or something like that. Not a priest, some kind of auxiliary liturgy helper or something. Okay, right. And anyway, here's what he writes. He writes the following. Lightning in the monastery of Pi at Olivia, Friday, 18th October, 1619. St. Luke Day at 8 p.m. He writes whatever their time, but it'd be translated 8 p.m. Monastery of Pi of Olivia, Franciscan order. A lightning strikes at the preacher's cell, crosses the wall and comes into the church, and falling to the tabernacle, smudges the face of Our Lady of Pi and burns her rough, goes down to the tabernacle and opens it, overturns the Jerusalem cross and hits the ground. A father that was in the church saw that the lightning was like a burning rolling vessel above the altar. It exited by the choir and rolled by the cloisters and climbed up the stairs. Descending the stairs were Father Seland and Father Gironi Sala, brothers. They lowered their heads to the ball of fire, and, sick with fear, the aforementioned Gironi Sala died from that. The same night and time, Louis de Burgunia and the son of Genersi see a scary glow. They look up and see in the sky a bar of fire as long as a spear and as wide as a hand that immediately vanished. End quote.
Oof.
So an intense phenomena.
Yeah.
Right? And this appears to happen really quickly, like the ball's just rolling through there in destruction. It hardly seems innocent. Like, it seems like a destructive thing. It causes fear. Killed a guy. I mean, he did die from fear, but it didn't hit him. But this is one of these strange things about these ball lightning things. People that eyewitnessed them, they often talk about how they will move objects, flip things over, right? And so that makes you think it's some sort of paranormal thing. But again, I thought, wait a minute, maybe it's not. Did a little more research. Turns out this statue of Our Lady of Pi, and probably also the tabernacle, where that's, if you don't know, that's where they hold the host in, have both iron parts.
Mm-hmm.
That might have an electromagnetic attraction.
Okay.
In fact, the statue was wood, but it was on an iron backing to hang it up on the wall, with iron nails, and the tabernacle similarly. So perhaps you could imagine, if this is just a normal, non-paranormal electromagnetic event that's natural but rare, maybe it is flying through and being attracted to ferromagnetic material. Maybe maybe that's why it flips things over. It's it has a magnetic effect.
Okay.
Maybe. Okay. I'm giving this the benefit of the doubt here. But it does, for this reason, a lot of the people's, this behavior, a lot of people have ascribed to it something that has a bit of intelligence to it. Because it seems to go through doors, it navigates buildings, it overturns artifacts. Strange, right? Now, we say, okay, that's a weird story. That's what people are saying. They're like, this is great. That's a weird story, but is this even real at all? What if that's just fake? I mean, you don't believe that, but you don't believe in nunchucks, right? That was recently the mainstream view. Despite the thousands of reports of ball lightning, no good evidence existed of it beyond personal account. But, in 2014, a group of Chinese researchers recorded, on accident, video and spectrograph of the phenomena for the first time.
Whoa.
It was recorded on video. Now, it wasn't a long one. It lasted about 2 seconds. It wasn't a long recording, but it was in the middle of a lightning storm. And they were recording an otherwise normal lightning storm. But at least how it looks from the video, there's a moment where it appears that several lightning strikes converge on the same spot. And as they fade, what looks to be about 5 meters in diameter, which is in real non-demonic units, 16 feet, a luminous sphere of energy. So imagine 7 branches of lightning striking the same spot.
Right.
And then as they fade away, there's this for 2 seconds, which doesn't sound like long, right? But 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. That's a long time for a lightning strike. 1.
Yeah.
2. I mean, the lightning strikes are usually pretty quick. So this is a long thing in terms of lightning. Furthermore, while this was the first recorded video of ball lightning in the wild, the year before that, in 2013, researchers in the U.S. at the Air Force Academy in Colorado made and photographed bright white plasmoid balls in their lab they generated trying to see if they could replicate what ball lightning was. And what they did was they had high-powered electric sparks discharged by electrodes partially submerged in electrolyte solutions. And when they did this, they used a lot of voltage. So they have their electrodes, they're in electrolyte solutions, and their discharging is making these transient plasmoid balls.
Ooh, cool.
Sort of hover in the air, and then they dissipate. Now, the electrolyte solutions, I thought, that seems like it could be a clue. So I did a little bit of digging. If you're not familiar with chemistry, an electrolyte is a mineral that can, it's a conduit for electricity when dissolved in water or other medium, but usually water. And they're necessary, very necessary for the nerves in your body to communicate and send electrical signals around your nerves and your muscles. They are technically salts, and the most common one in your body being, of course, regular table salt, sodium chloride. But there's also other ones in your body and in the world. There's potassium, chloride, magnesium, magnesium phosphate, calcium, etc. Right? These salts that act as, they enable water and other liquids, but mostly we talk about water, to carry electricity. Because, like distilled water is not really a good, pure water is not really a good electrical conduit.
You can put yourself in the hospital drinking distilled water.
Right, because it doesn't let you have your nerve. What tends to happen if you drink distilled water only, you don't get your electrolytes that you need, and then your nerves begin to not transmit electricity as quickly as properly, and then your heart tends to go into arrhythmia because it's a very finely tuned electrical mechanism there.
Yep.
So don't drink distilled water, at least not often. So basically this team in Colorado, they were using these discharges submerged in the solution of electrolytes. And I thought, if that makes ball lightning, might we conclude then, this is my thought, that ball lightning can only occur in rare instances where perhaps there is a large amount of electrolytes like in the atmosphere, or the same sort of process, like a dissolve in the atmosphere. There's some impurities that allow for the transmission of electricity in the fluid of the air. Perhaps even salt. And where do you get salt in the air? Obviously near the sea. Well, where was Valencia? This first place, southeastern Spain, directly on the Mediterranean coast. It was there that a bunch of so imagine maybe there's a bunch of aerosolized water droplets in the air, aerosolized sea droplets of salt water, in the presence of a high voltage electrical discharge. Would that be naturally occurring similar conditions to what these people created in their lab? Maybe. Of course, the counter to this thinking would be, and I said, maybe. But then I thought, well, if that were true, would not then sailors be the most likely to report ball lightning? And that didn't seem to be true. Unless what we currently call ball lightning is a special case of what used to be called St. Elmo's fire.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. This is the key for me. All right. So some people have also made this connection. If it's true, then 1,000% there have been more reports of ball lightning on the sea than on the land, and my hypothesis is vindicated. If indeed ball lightning is some sort of manifestation of St. Elmo's fire or vice versa, then yes. And then I thought, can I make that connection? And it depends on what you think ball lightning actually is. So like St. Elmo's fire, you're familiar with, right?
Not really, but a little.
Okay.
Why don't you brush me up?
St. Elmo's fire you can think of as the little lightning bolt that couldn't. It's a buildup of charge, especially on like the metal mast of a ship or something, that just doesn't ever get quite enough oomph to arc through the air.
Okay.
So it's building up charge. It's like, I want a bolt of lightning. And it's just never, it's like, no, you're not quite strong enough. Right? That's a crude way of thinking about it. It builds up and up and up. And then as it builds up, it doesn't quite you get a coronal discharge of electricity that causes a nice blue, sometimes purplish glow around the metal. So you're a sailor at night. You got your iron mast on the ship. You're going across the Atlantic Ocean. A little bit stormy, but not too bad. And then you just sitting there and you see your mast begins to glow a soft purple. And everyone's a little freaked out by it. And they attribute it at first to a miracle from St. Elmo, who's patron saint of sailors. It's like he's going to see you through this storm, right? He's there. The storm's raging. You're a little scared. It's not too bad, but oh wait, our ship is glowing. Heavenly glow. We're going to be fine. Now that's not actually the best, because 1/3 of St. Elmo's fires tend to then cross over into a lightning bolt and your ship explodes.
Yeah.
So it's not the best sign from heaven that you're going to be okay. But in those places where it doesn't, then it's fine.
Well, it's a sign that you're either going to be fine or you're about to meet God.
Right. And it's also a sign that maybe you shouldn't make your mast out of metal. Or whatever. So unless there's, and they wouldn't, but they'd have metal pieces on them that would glow and stuff. So that doesn't sound like ball lightning. Unless there's something to this electrolyte thing, and somehow I thought, well, is maybe ball lightning somehow imagine a charged portion of the atmosphere, like a protoplasma almost. Like there's a localization of charge holding the charge together in the air a bit, like a little ball, like it's magnetically held together, and it just doesn't have enough oomph to discharge. So it's like a floating pocket of St. Elmo's fire. It's trying to, but and here's the thing: I found out about the same proportion of ball lightning turns into an explosion, about 1/3. So maybe it's like bam, and it occasionally does, right? Just spitballing, but I was So there are people besides me, scientists, who have put forward several theories about what ball lightning is. These range from like the sort of, it's a plasmoid theory to a sort of unique theory put forth by some guys in New Zealand who said that it's caused by regular lightning striking the soil and turning its chemical contents into a vapor, which then condenses into a ball of floating aerosols that's like on fire. Right?
Okay.
Maybe. But that theory, in my theory, these are both very naturalistic theories of ball lightning. Like it's a rare but natural phenomenon.
Not really your style.
I know, but this is what I try to follow the evidence.
Sure.
Neither of these account for the stranger, weirder behaviors of ball lightning, like it seeming to move down corridors or down roadways, opening boxes, using, navigating the interiors of buildings or whatever. Or like this behavior from a ball lightning sighting in the mid-1960s. Mid-1960s, Air Force Lieutenant Don Smith was flying a C-133A cargo plane from California to Hawaii. Again, note he's over the ocean. And it depends on the account you read. There are a couple, but they all agree that the ball lightning he saw appears in the cockpit. And some say it traveled through the walls of the plane.
Ooh.
And then you say, well, how would a naturalistic explanation explain that? Here's the full account. The lieutenant said that prior to the ball lightning coming into the plane, he saw, this is where I was like, 2 horns of St. Elmo's fire appear on the plane's randome, which is the radar cover.
Mm-hmm.
He said, quote, it looked as if the airplane had bull's horns glowing with blue electricity.
Oh, weird.
And then, so you have St. Elmo's fire appearing, and then ball lightning in the cockpit. Right? And that sort of thing, and I began looking at this, and there's always this connection between the St. Elmo's fire and the ball lightning. Not always, but often enough it makes you think, right? Like I said, and Lieutenant Don is very lucky because about 1/3 of the ball lightnings ended in a bang, and this did not. So I tend to think it's a good theory. I think it's a naturalistic theory, yes. This is one time I'm not opting for a paranormal theory. I'm opting for a naturalistic explanation. The fact that 1/3 end in explosion. The fact that it's sometimes seen alongside St. Elmo's fire, which is the lightning that couldn't. The fact that it can be made in a lab with electrolyte solutions and tends to happen at the sea or near the sea in the salt air. I like this theory. I believe that ball lightning is a specific form of St. Elmo's fire that occurs under special conditions. However, just the aesthetics of the ball lightning, the look of it, its behavior, how it moves, it's so close to another phenomenon that I wanted to explore if maybe that was also connected. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it is. But it has the same mouth feel, you would say, as spook lights or ghost lights.
Yeah, man.
Which is the modern term for will-o'-the-wisps.
Yep.
Have you ever seen a will-o'-the-wisp?
No.
I have never seen one either, but my mother has.
Really?
Specifically, she saw the famous Arkansas spook light. America has several spook lights that you can go see with regularity. They've been recorded on film, and people go there. You can go see them. The one of the most famous ones is the one she went and saw, which is the Arkansas spook light. It's also known as the Gurdon ghost light because it's commonly sighted near Gurdon, Arkansas, in Clark County. She saw this herself, I'm not sure, before I was born. And what it is, again, it's a blue to greenish glow, about the size of a grapefruit, like in a ball shape, just sort of hovering in the air, and it goes down through the woods, and it follows the rails of a deserted stretch of railroad track.
Ooh.
The legend being that the Gurdon ghost light was first sighted in 1931 after a railroad worker died on this section of the tracks. And that this light is his ghost still patrolling the tracks with his lantern in his hand. Right? And I say died, I really mean murdered with a shovel. William McLean was killed by one of his employees named McBride, because this is a classic Irish on Irish violence, who was not letting him work more hours. He said, "I need more overtime, boss man." And he said, "I can't afford it." And so he hit him in the head with a shovel. McLean fell down. Then he threw down the shovel and picked up a spike hammer and hit him in the head with a spike hammer. Which, again, stick fighting. Very effective.
Yeah.
And now he's getting hit in the head with a spike hammer is a good way to be dead. And he was killed, and McBride was later executed. He was hung for this murder. So, in the 1994 TV show Unsolved Mysteries, do you remember this show?
I remember Unsolved Mysteries, yeah.
They did a bit on the Gordon Light, episode 9 of season 7. And they're on that show, which you can find on YouTube. Actually, the entire Unsolved Mysteries are up on YouTube for free, which is great. Just public service announcement. They actually captured it on photo and video. And you can go see it. Now, the video is not spectacular because it's sort of, you ever try to video a dim light?
Yeah, I mean,
it's sort of like that, but you can see it. But the photo is pretty good. And the photo, they clicked an exact moment when it forms into what looks like a little ball above the track, right? And it's just a little floating ball above the track. And again, this is something that happens regularly enough. Like if you go there any given night, you won't see it. But if you go there every night for 2 weeks, you will probably see it. It's like that often. Most people in Gurdon have seen it. And we'll tell you, "Oh yeah, I've seen it several times. We used to go out there as teenagers, you know." So it's a 100% repeatable thing. People have seen it. They photographed it. It's said to float typically 1 to 3 feet off the tracks. Sometimes slightly changes colors, and it moves up and down the tracks, and is rarely visible for more than 10 seconds at a time. Okay. And one of the first sightings was actually by a train man riding the rails who saw it at night following his train after this murder. Which again feels like how ball lightning moves. It's sort of moving, following the train, right? But again, I thought, but we have this metallic iron track, which is going up and down. And you can imagine this guy that first sees it, maybe his big piece of iron rolling down the track is setting it off and dragging it forward in an electromagnetic way somehow. Right. Like it appears to be following him because it's, and it does this until he crosses some place where it isn't, it doesn't work. And again, this all sounds very naturalistic. And I was like, am I really going to connect ball lightning to will-o'-the-wisp based on this railroad track? Read a little bit more. There's a guy named Nick Redfern, great researcher. I've talked about him before. He wrote the book that was our main reference in the Men in Black episode. Mm-hmm. And he actually saw a spook light himself. Here in America. Cool. He's British, but he was in America. He was in the big thicket in Texas looking for Bigfoot, as you do. Mm-hmm. And the big thicket is, it's what it sounds like. It's a big thicket. It's a big, swampy natural park, woodsy area in southeast Texas near Louisiana. And he was there, and they have, just as Arkansas has the Ghost Light, they have a stretch of road called the Ghost Road, because on the Ghost Road, people see the Ghost Light. Or near the Ghost Light, right? Or near the Ghost Road. It's sometimes called the Light of Saratoga because it's near the city of Saratoga. Okay. And here is his account. He says, early on, what turned out to be a bright and sunny Sunday morning on June 2005, me, Rob, and Austin, Rob Miles of the Austin-based Scientific Anomaly Institute, and two conference attendees, Renee and Nancy, met and prearranged a location for our journey into the unknown, looking for Bigfoot. I can hardly say the trip was one of the proportions that would have made Jack Kerouac proud, but nevertheless, we were on a mission, and everyone was fired up about what we might uncover. So our convoy set off in earnest. It was late afternoon when we finally arrived in the town of, I can't pronounce it, Kunzi. Where all of us had reservations at the local Super 8. After a shower and a Mexican dinner, we were forest bound. And this was when things got very strange, when it got dark, of course. Then suddenly it happened. We were on our way back to the vehicles to grab a bite to eat and some drinks when, as we entered a clearing in the trees, a basketball-sized bright light floated over us at a height of about 35 feet. It was moving from right to left and sailed slowly yet purposely on its journey. The ghost light was present for barely a handful of seconds, but it was definitely there. I have no idea what it was, only that it was there, until, that is, it wasn't there. Okay. And I thought, well, I can't connect that in any way, right? But I looked into the Ghost Road thing. The Ghost Road is a dirt road through the forest, constructed on the bed of a former railroad line. Dun, dun, dun! Duh! That means the iron is almost certainly still there because they're not going to dig up the iron railings. Yeah. So we have these will-o'-the-wisps that are occurring always on these railroad tracks. It has to be in the presence of that's where they occur, right? But I was talking this through with somebody, and he said, yeah, but will-o'-the-wisp are European in origin from before the time of railroads, so that can't be it. Or can it? I said to him, very bullishly. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. But I'm sure I felt so confident that I was onto something that I had to. It's like there must be a way that this manifests. And I found the answer in Pompeii. Ooh. In Pompeii. Because Pompeii, as everyone knows, the eruption made a little time capsule. Yep. And archaeologists from the University of Massachusetts were there. And they were looking at just Roman architecture and what they were doing, right? And they found that there were potholes that they had repaired. And guess what they used to repair the potholes? Molten
iron.
And like rock and stuff. Sort of like an iron-based asphalt patch.
Wow.
And so all these European stories of the Middle Ages, of people walking through these roads in the woods at night, seeing the same thing, are they following, perhaps, the old abandoned Roman roads that were heavily iron patched hundreds of thousands of years before, maybe, like several hundred years before, or even 1,000 years before? Mm-hmm. If you're in like the 1300s, maybe in the year 300, the Romans had gone through, patched this road up time and again, just shoop, shoop, to now it was just this, they had these sections, just with all this iron in there. And that this is sort of the same thing as our old railroad tracks. Right? And maybe that's why they occurred in the same places, like they over and over again. And if you pinpointed that's an exercise to the reader. If you pinpoint where these will-o'-the-wisp were common, I would bet money you find they lie upon old Roman roads. And if you dug up there, you'd find that they'd patch those things quite a bit. That is my theory.
Field trip.
Now, the most commonly accepted theory for will-o'-the-wisps has been and remains, by the scientific community, the old standby of swamp gas.
Yeah.
Which tends to go into the go-to debunking explanation of pretty much everything seen in the sky at night.
Right.
But strangely, you never see any pictures of this. They're like, oh, it's swamp gas. And then you're just like, oh, well, show me some images of swamp gas spontaneously illuminating in the night. Never happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't go to a swamp at night. That doesn't occur, really. There are more credible videos of ghosts online than there are of burning swamp gas. And if you ask them what causes it, they immediately pivot to it not being swamp gas at all. Like I kid you not, when you research what swamp gas is that could be causing lights, they go, oh, it's actually probably just a group of fireflies. Or an owl with its white wings reflecting the moon at night. They drop the gas almost immediately when you question it because it doesn't really happen.
Right.
When they stick to it, they say it's like methane gas escaping decaying biomatter in swampy areas and blah, 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 right? And it somehow spontaneously combusts. Here's the thing, right? That doesn't happen. Now, you can collect methane from a swamp, and then you can light it on fire. That's possible. I've never seen it light on fire without someone purposely taking a lighter to it, Mm-hmm. And when you do, it burns like the pilot light of a water heater or whatever. Just like a normal flame. Just not a floating, bobbling sphere. And the idea that it's swamp gas goes all the way back to 1596 to a book with a laboriously long title of, quote, of ghosts and spirits walking by night and of strange noises, cracks, and sundry forewarnings, which commonly happen before the death of men, great slaughters, and alterations of kingdoms.
What's a doozy?
By a guy named Ludwig Lavater. And in his chapter called, that quote, that many natural things are taken to be ghosts, he writes, many times candles and small fires appear in the night and seem to run up and down. Sometimes these fires go alone in the night season, and put such as see them as they travel by night in great fear. But these things, and many such like, have their natural causes. Natural philosophers write that thick exhalations arise out of the earth and are kindled, mines full of sulfur and brimstone. If the air enter up into it, as it lieth in the holes and veins of the earth, will kindle on fire and strive to get out. So the idea that it's swamp gas is over 400 years old, and in all that time, they've never actually recorded it happening once. Nothing. Yet they still stick to this theory because it's the only one they have which doesn't sound too woo-woo. Right?
Right.
So it must be stressed that there's so little evidence backing up luminous swamp gas, much less that it causes UFO ghost lights. But I here am offering you, Neil deGrasse Tyson, a perfectly natural explanation of will-o'-the-wisps, ball lightning, and St. Elmo's fire that you can have. And go out, I'm bringing it all together, right? So I think that this has strong merit because of the numerous things just sort of coming together. The St. Elmo's fire is not always, but often seen in conjunction with the ball lightning. The ball lightning is always seen, like the St. Elmo's fire, in conjunction with a greater lightning storm. The will-o'-the-wisps have the same movement and sort of behavior and look and appearance as the ball lightning, and they tend to track, at least in America, old railroad iron places. And then we have a sufficient explanation for how that could have happened in the pre-railroad age in Europe where they were first documented. So I think that this may be the solution.
So maybe if you allow for some variation in the intensity of the thing.
Right, variation, like a small, like you have maybe it's a little bit stormy in Gurdon, Arkansas, but not lightning time. But maybe there's a little bit of charge in the air, and it's just, and maybe this, and it's just enough where there's a little bit of that going, and then these, like I said, in the experiment in the lab, the electrodes were buried in an electrolyte solution. Well, you have this buried iron. Perhaps the soil there, or the moisture there, has more salinity, right? And that is causing this in these specific places. This is why it happens in some and not others. You have localized like salt pockets, right, which would produce the natural conditions that would be similar to the lab, which would create a small amount of ball lightning. It just is right there, a small amount of St. Elmo's fire floating in the air. And then, a big amount is a bigger amount, and that looks like ball lightning. And that would explain like why it seems to track at objects and go towards this, because it has some electromagnetic properties, because it's electromagnetic charge, right?
Now, I saw a video supposedly of ball lightning that everybody said was fake, but I remember this video was the lightning was passing over a railroad track.
I've seen that one. I think that one is probably fake. I've seen.
Okay.
There's another one from Russia that looks more real.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say. It's not. The problem with those is it's one of those things that's like easier to fake, because one of the easiest things to do a CGI of is a ball of light.
Right. Yeah.
You just stick that in the computer, like make a bright spot here, and then add electrical sounds. And that's pretty easy to. That's the problem with that. But yeah, it is interesting that they even put that over a railroad.
Mm-hmm. They knew, even in their fakery.
This is an area of maps exploration that we must fund, where we need to see if we can more easily pin this down. We need to figure out, because there's like the Brown Mountain Lights.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Big Thicket Ghost Light. There's the Gurdon Light. There's several of these in America that are repeatedly seen. You can go there, and we need to figure out, do these share in common? Because the Brown Mountain Light Railroad right there, I looked into it. It's basically in the location of an old railroad track.
Really?
I know, and I was like,
I've looked into the Brown Mountain Light also. I haven't been out there, but
yeah, this is so. I was like, this begins to be predictive. It's like they have to have the presence of iron in the soil. And it needs so maybe if we go out there and if we could do soil samples from each of those, or listen, I know so many of the world's great scientists listen to us too. Feel free to go do this work. Just give us a little footnote credit.
Mm-hmm.
This was go take some soil samples of these places and see if they don't have elevated electrolytes, salinity, like more salt in there, or something like that could be accounting for. What would cause this? I don't know. I'm just saying. I bet we'd find spook lights in Europe too, and if we dug, the old ones would be along Roman roads that I imagine they had patched. You can imagine one particular spot that was really heavily worn, patched over and over again, and it just has a lot of iron in it.
Yeah.
Right. And then that would be the spot of the will-o'-the-wisp that would happen. So in this episode today, we've taken the opposite approach and given a natural, not paranormal explanation for a seemingly paranormal phenomena. You're welcome.
I feel like Bill Nye the Science Guy right now.
I know. Yeah. Well, at least we have degrees and stuff.
You can be Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I am Neil deGrasse Tyson. What if I really was? This is how I really talk?
That'd be weird.
And my voice that I put on the... for the spooky show is just that.
You think anybody believe that?
That I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah. You should do it on Twitter.
I should just claim to be I'm the alt of Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
I'm the alt of Neil. I'm the alt of every. I don't think Neil deGrasse Tyson has enough of a sense of humor for this to be believable.
Well, that's surely true.
He falls into that problem of scientists trying to take themselves too seriously. Richard Feynman didn't do that. That's why I enjoy him. Everyone go read Richard Feynman stuff. What is this song?
This is Bon Iver singing nice. I Can't Make You Love Me.
Hey, what if we had a MAP Sacred Heart group?
That'd be cool. I'm gonna get a book.
Okay.
Thought we had to have some feels since we're talking about romance.
Yeah, it's good. I went down a hole with this ball lighting stuff, but I think it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I think that these three, Will-o'-the-Wisps, ball lightning, and St. Elmo's fire are the same phenomena.
I'm going to contemplate this deeply.
Under different conditions.
I'll send you a dispatch from the desert.
Oh yeah, good. This may be the last time I talk to you. You may die.
Well, it's been fun.
You do have to the rattlesnakes if you do go to the petrified forest, the rattlesnakes are a thing.
Okay, I'll be very cautious.
More so the scorpions too. They get in your tent and stuff if you're not careful. You know the birds out there drink blood.
I'm starting to reconsider my choice.
Well, there's so little water. A lot of them get their moisture from the blood of animals they kill.
That's weird. I'm gonna wrap it.